In part two of our tour of the Kentucky Reptile Zoo, I have a nice candid chat with Jim Harrison about the reptile zoo, how it came to be. As well, we discuss different species and their venoms and how they're unique, their applications in the medical fields, for opioid research, for cancer. We also have discussions about our experiences over the years of working with venomous snakes, albeit I've never even remotely had aspirations of getting to the level where he is, but I had kept before, and we both have the scars to prove it. I always will still have a portion of me will always still be near and dear to these beautiful, gorgeous, often misunderstood, wonderful creatures, the serpents of our world.
I started the Kentucky Reptile Zoo. I started extracting venom about 43 years ago, and one of the reasons I started doing extractions is because in the past, snakes that were extracted from died. Yes. They lived 6 months. Yeah. They were force-fed, they went through all kinds of stress. And I didn't think it was good for the snakes, obviously, but I also didn't think it was a resource that was being used appropriately. And so as people started learning how to breed snakes, and I attended IHS meetings and I talked to people who were breeding snakes, I learned husbandry. And so I decided to take the husbandry side of it and start producing venom from animals that were mostly captive born. So that's when we started working with developing snakes that were captive born here at the zoo. I have several snakes here right now that are over 40 years old.
Yeah, you showed us some of the ones, some of the really old westerns.
Yeah, and the crate that's on display in the Tropics building, is like 45 years old. Wow. It came to me from the Columbus Zoo. Yep. So, and I've had it for over 30 some years, and it's going strong. It's not doing that old snake thing, but I wanted to do something that would benefit mankind as well as benefit the snakes, and that is to hopefully end some suffering. Yep. And some of that's from snakebite, but some of that's from cancer research, opiate research using the venoms for the pain receptors and stuff like that. So
they use different types of venoms. They also use in all sorts of different makeup and skin type products as well.
Yeah, they do. And I'll be honest with you, we do sell some venom to those kind of things, but the vanity part of it gets to me. I'm not really.
It means nothing. Yeah.
Yeah,
it means absolutely nothing.
I'm more interested in, if a child has cancer, if we find something that will help that child. A person that has an opiate addiction, we can get them off opiates by putting them on this type of drug that would be made from Probroxin or from Dendroaspis venom, the mamba's venom, that would not be so addictive. Yeah. Now, researchers who are using those venoms are saying they're not going to be addictive, but there's physiological addiction and there's psychological addiction, and anything that gives you pleasure is going to make you become addicted. So there's nothing that's going to be purely non-addictive.
What made you start this? Besides like the actual zoo aspect, instead of just doing it on the side?
I was a police officer. I got ran over by a stolen car. I didn't want to sit on my butt and just,
heard some of your tales. You've lived a pretty colorful life.
So I decided that I wanted to educate people, so I decided to come down here, and a gentleman named Benny Bryant allowed me to have a little storefront for a while to have an exhibit in. And it went over okay. So I bought this property, and we started putting buildings on, and we're still in the process we're an institutional nonprofit, and we're all self-funded. So we don't get any funding from anything except from ourselves and from people coming through the gate. So what we did was we just kept building, and I've just paid the property off this last month, so I own the property. Yep. So I don't own the bank anything, which is really good to feel.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, it's a good feeling not owning the bank. But
well, yours is probably one of the few properties that if everything ever happened that they'd have to come and take the land, they might just go, nah, we'll leave that one beside. We don't need that one.
Well, the big, as you notice, the buildings are up off the ground.
Yeah.
This was not supposed to be a floodplain, but it is.
Yeah.
So
we're taking a wood building off the ground also just good sense.
Yeah, it's
really.
always good sense. But we're actually going to build up even higher because we had a really bad flood that went into the tropics this year.
So it's really like Thailand, put them all up on stilts, like 6 feet off the ground or something.
If you saw the house, we built the house, it has to be, they wanted it like 5 feet more up off the ground. And I'm like, no, if we put it 5 feet more up off the ground, it costs us a lot more money. But if If it got that much water here, there wouldn't be anything here. Everything south of here would be underwater.
Yeah.
You know, Stanton would be gone. So, but I got the property down here and we set up, and we do educational programs all over the place. Kristen's flying to London tomorrow to attend the Oxford Venom conference. She's writing a chapter in a book on Venoms with Steve McCassie's book on Venoms. So we try to do everything. We wouldn't exist.
A strong educational focus.
Yeah, strong education. But we wouldn't exist if we didn't do everything, because the venom is not liquid gold.
Right.
You know, it's just a small part of what we do, and it's something we're actually trying to get away from doing. We're trying to put ourselves out of business by becoming able to make venoms in a petri dish, basically.
Yeah,
so they're
synthetic.
doing DNA and synthetic and stuff. So.
Well, I was because I'd never been here, and my friend mentioned that we got an opportunity. Let's go here, and I said, sure, let's do that. So I actually did a bit of research, and I went through the website, and I was looking at stuff, and I saw the venom prices, and I watched that list, and at the very bottom, something caught my eye. Is you extract venom from Heloderma?
My wife does.
How do you do that?
Because
They don't inject it the same way.
Right.
And I wondered about that.
There's a video on YouTube of her doing it with the Gila monsters, with Suspectum. Basically, what we did was we use a sterile calf nipple, and we let them chew on it, and we time it for stress. We figure about 5 minutes is as stressful as we want them to get. They'll start salivating, and the venom will start coming up through the grooves in the teeth, and it'll start dripping down. And then it drips down into the funnel, and then we take it and we lyophilize it and freeze dry it. Now, what is amazing is we got almost 1.5 grams out of a beating once. So that's a lot. So, and but it would have to chew on you for a long time to get that into you. But she's pretty good at it. It's like, I tell her it's like extracting from an alligator, basically, because they're twisting and they're doing everything else, and they're trying to get away from you, so they're fighting with you.
Yeah.
So, but you know, she does that. She does some of the rear fang snakes. She's not interested in doing any of the others, because she's seen what happens when things go bad, and she doesn't want to be in that position. And she's had 2 Western bites, because she does all the medical.
Yeah.
And so anytime anything functionally can go wrong, something will. And she's had 2 Western bites in 20 some years. And we house right now, I was thinking we were at 500, but we're close to 600 Westerns right now.
Yeah.
So she does a lot of work with them. And if one gets parasites or anything, she's the one that runs them up a tube or puts them in a press box. And you know, if something malfunctions, she's the one that has to deal with it. So, but that's the hardest bite I've ever had to deal with, though, is having somebody else when the shoe's on the other foot. Yeah. You know, when I'm on the gurney, it's different, because I know how I'm going to react. But when you see somebody you love, now I have a little bit better feeling how she feels when I'm on it.
But she's also in the same sort of industry with you. Like she works with this, she's been around it. She knows to keep calm, keep that heart rate as low as possible, do your timelines. You have your protocols in place.
She attends all the snakebite conferences and stuff, and you know, we try to stay educated, because you know, we understand that the local hospital isn't going to know about COVID. The local hospital isn't going to know about anti-serums that are not, you know, that are not approved by the FDA.
Did you bring your own?
Yeah, we do. We do. I be honest, Kristen says this all the time, but it's really stupid if we didn't. I've had an IND number, an investigational drug license, to possess an investigational drug since I was 18 years old, and I'm 60. I've been importing anti-serum that long. Now, there's problems sometimes, you know, countries dealing with foreign countries and stuff like that, but how much is your life worth?
Yes.
I mean, it's a cost of doing business. I mean, you know.
I can tell you it's $38,000 was what it cost for my bite.
Yeah. You know, even with them applying the anti-serum that we bring with us, they charge a fee for giving it to you.
Oh, definitely.
And they mark it up. Now, the crowfab, which
that needle's got to be $1,000 alone, with the way the U.S. medical system works.
Yeah, well, the Band-Aid is $10. You know, but if they open it and they don't use it, I'm always aware of it, because I make sure we keep track of what's used and what's not used, because I don't pay for anything I don't, because I know how it works. I worked in the medical field, so I know how it works. So, but you know, with the anti-serum and stuff, it is expensive. But it's like we tell people, you know, cardiac drugs are expensive. You know, the problem is that the pharmaceutical companies have to make money,
Yep.
and
And
they
all
want to
that
make a lot.
R&D that goes into developing those
Right.
products is years and years.
But the worst thing is really here in the States is all the lawsuits. If you watch commercials on TV, you'll see even before a drug comes out on the market, if you have a reaction to this drug, call me. I will sue for you.
Well, I love the American commercials. I'm coming from Canada. I love the American commercials when there's a new drug being announced.
Yeah.
And it's always they always talk about there's always a happy family with the kids
Yeah,
walking
yeah.
through the park, lasts for about 30 seconds, and then there's like a minute and a half of super speedy disclaimer of all these things that can happen.
Yep,
May result in death.
bloody diarrhea. You know, but you'll have hair. You know,
Now, I heard you talk earlier about that you were working with cobras was your first thing that ever
Yeah.
worked with. I myself never worked with any elapids at all. I have a very strong level of respect for them. But crotalids, I'm totally comfortable in a room full of crotalids on the floor, and I can work in that environment.
I be honest with you. You know, this people always asking me what snake makes me the most nervous, and I always look at them as the same because they can all hurt me.
Yep.
So I never give them I never assume they're going to do something or underestimate them, I hope. But the snake that's probably one of the hardest to handle is the sawscale lizard. And the reason sawscales are hard is their size. Smaller animals are hard to deal with.
Yes.
Because holding them, you just have a tiny little air that you can have there. And one little prick from some of those guys, I've seen people bleed out, you know, from a very small sawscale, bleed out into their gums, bleed out into their eyes. You know, they go into rhabdomyolysis and they go into renal failure, and you know, it's a
From an animal this big. Yeah, that's the
yeah,
reality.
Actually,
of it,
I saw a guy get bit by one that was about this big, and he had cut himself shaving the day before, and he started spontaneously bleeding from the place where he cut himself.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's with anti-serum already started.
Yeah.
So you know, the problem with the anti-serum for Echis is Echis goes all the way across the northern Africa, all the way to Sri Lanka. There are different species and there are different subspecies. None of the anti-serums cross real well for each other.
Yeah.
And some are not produced for it.
But like the ones like your different mambas and stuff like that, it's almost like they've been oiled down. They're not only fast, but they're challenging to get at first, and then they're so smooth that they slide through your hands. Even.
Actually, to me, mambas are one of the easiest, because what we do with them is we run them up a tube,
Yeah.
and when they come out the end of the tube, I pin them. Once I got a hold of them, they're easy.
Yeah.
They're not real strong.
No.
I mean,
They're an
I
arboreal
have,
snake.
yeah, I've got kings that'll grab the funnel, crunch down and break the funnel. I've got kings that'll grab the funnel, pull it out and spit it across the room.
Yeah.
Just because they're being weenies.
Have you been able to get them off their normal diet?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've been breeding kings for,
That's usually the
About
challenge for most people when
40
they get their first one.
the first one I got I was 17 when I got my first king, and the first time I extracted Venom was around that age. I wasn't doing it in my basement. I was doing it with a physician who was a researcher. But I started breeding them maybe 3 years after that.
Yeah.
And acclimating them became pretty easy after a while. You bring them in, you run a stool, you do a slow killing of parasites.
Yeah.
You kill them all at once, you kill the snake.
Yeah.
Because they get peritonitis very easily from all the dead parasites. So you just clean them out slow. One of the problems with feeding them snakes is there's so much possibility of cross-contamination. Because when you feed a snake, you have crypto that you can freeze, and they'll get crypto from the other snake. And so they'll start regurgitating and they'll die. There's viruses that you can freeze, and as soon as you unfreeze them,
They come back.
they come back.
Yeah.
So freezing a snake does not make the snake a good food item.
Right.
So you can't use it as food item.
So I was, back in the day, I wasn't probably the best, most responsible. When I got into Venomous at first, I literally converted my old waterbed. I still lived at home and had drawers underneath it. I took the drawers out, lifted the waterbed out, and put all my little tubs. And as long as the tubs were big enough to fit inside that, it was a perfect thing for temperature control. And it worked great. And the only thing my mom said about living in the house, I could have all sorts of stuff, no snakes.
Yeah.
And then we had a house fire that an iguana knocked a heat lamp down and it burnt the whole room. And my mom said, "You had snakes." I'm just really thankful she didn't find at the time the live ones and know what kind of snakes per se. But only crotalids is all I ever did. I had gaboons, schneglii, and Wangler's Temple was the only other
Well,
non-American
the
species.
kings and stuff, we get questioned by this all the time, but our kings are on display in different zoos all over the United States. They're all road eaters.
Yep.
People say, well, they can't digest the fur. Well, the fur is the same as the scale.
Yep.
And if you look at the
Essentially
stool,
almost made of the same compound.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you look at the stool of a snake that eats a snake, and you really look closely, you'll find scales. So they don't digest everything. So, there will be a little bit of fur occasionally. A lot of times now, it's easy to use naked rats and naked mice.
Yeah,
so,
they've made them now.
Yeah, so that we have the genetic things. But the biggest problem I see with feeding rodents to snakes that eat snakes is you have to be careful not to overfeed them because there's more fat compound to them. So you have a better chance of giving them fatty liver disease by getting them too fat. But I've never had that problem. I've had kings that lived 30, 40 years on rodents. I raised them from babies. Yep. So a couple of our babies one's at Toledo. We sent a gaboon to Toronto Zoo. I don't think we sent a king to them. But
Just throw it in a Purolator box and send it on its way.
Nah. You have to put them in wooden boxes. And
all labeled
doubles bagged, labeled.
Well, that was the funniest thing I remember is in Canada, a lot of the cities will have bylaws that you can't keep certain things, and that's responsible. But I live out in the country, and the bylaws for the RM sometimes have certain things, but sometimes they'll put, like one of the cities I work in, they'll put all boids are illegal, all of them.
Yeah.
All venomous is illegal, but crocodilians aren't on their list.
Right.
It's just like, who in their right mind would want to ever have that? Well, trust me, there's people that want to have that stuff. But I remember back in the day being able to bring in animals because our airports are federal.
Yeah.
Even though the city has bylaws, the airport can't. So you can bring them in, no problem. Do you have a favorite species to work with out of all your years?
I like anacondas.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got, bad time to talk about Amazon right now, but I caught an anaconda when I was younger in Amazon. I loved them ever since. And myself and Pete Strimple bred them back in the late 70s and 80s. And he used my male and he had a huge female. So, but, back in the old days, it was, I hate to say that because it makes me feel like my dad. I know in the old days, but there was egos, but there weren't as much predominance of the egos to the sense of you could ask somebody a question and they would answer it. Yeah. Like I was saying before, I'm going to give you my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right. It just means my opinion, and you may not like what I have to say, but you know what I said, and I'm not going to go behind your back and say something different. Yeah. So I had people, when it first started becoming popular and people started learning how to breed stuff, I had people coming to me and saying, well, so-and-so said jack the temperature up to this. I'm like, jack the temperature up to that, you kill the sperm. Yeah. He's trying to make sure.
And when would that animal ever experience that threshold ever in the wild?
Right.
We don't breed because we're stressed.
Right. And that's what it was there were people who were ahead of the game and they didn't want anybody else catching up. Yeah. And so, they would tell them.
They're the first out the gate, you get the more money, right? That's what it's all about.
Right. It's a pyramid scheme. The only way you're going to get rich being a herpetologist is if you already were rich and you want to lose a whole bunch of money. I don't take a salary to do this. I do this for free. I live off a small pension. All I have to have is my workout area, my vitamins, and my wife, and that's it. That's all. And my animals. I mean, when I set out to do this when I was a kid, I was going to retire from the police department or whatever I was doing, and I was going to open up a zoo. That's what I wanted to do. And
just odd you're not in Florida. Everybody does it in Florida.
Yeah, well, I knew it wasn't going to be in Florida. So I had to be someplace where there was tourism, but I also had to be someplace where we're not inundated with like a million zoos so that they're competing against each other. And I wanted to be someplace where in the winter I don't have to talk to people.
Yeah. Well, Kentucky's a beautiful state. I absolutely love coming here. I can't thank you enough, Jim, for taking the time with us. The legend himself, Mr. Jim Harrison. Make a stop, Kentucky Reptile Zoo.
After our interview, Jim asked if we wanted to see the lab, the place where all the magic happens. Of course we said yes, and I took the opportunity to discuss with him stingrays.
Yeah, they'll kill them on sight if they see them. Yeah. But at home, having gone through different venomations and stuff like that, even if you go through a wasp sting or a bee sting, you have those sensations. But I remember in the big tank, and I had a 750-gallon tank, and I had 4 freshwater, regular, the pet store Mataro Stingrays, and I was respectful, and I worked with them. I wasn't the one wanting to hand feed them all the time.
Right.
But I remember being in the tank, and the tank was big enough that I had to go into it, and just shuffling around in the sand, cleaning the tank.
That's cool to have a tank big
No,
enough.
I never touched the Stingray,
Yeah.
but what I did find is one of the shed barbs stuck into my pinky. And the thing that was the weirdest is, as soon as it happened, there's the puncture, and there are barbed, but we're talking something that's only about this big. These are little ones. I had a couple of bigger ones, but the bigger ones, it was like the size of a pencil, and you can understand why it would hurt.
Yeah.
If you got nailed in the Amazon by one of those by stepping on it, it's not going to be the sting or the hurt initially. It's the fact that you're probably going to be on a horrible wooden boat going at almost 0 speed for 30 hours to get to the nearest hospital.
Well, luckily I was with doctors from Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
And what happened was is that they made a slight incision and pulled it through.
Okay.
Instead of pulling it out, because of where the barbs are, they pulled through it. So, but the pain receptor toxin, it really freaking hurt.
But when I pulled out that little white, it was white, like
Yeah.
it's a completely shed barb,
Right.
and it has, but they don't produce a venom gland. Stingray, the freshwater brays do not have a venom gland that pumps venom into it.
Right.
It's basically a protein that's in the slime coat, isn't it?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
I don't know. That's something I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm going to tell you. I don't know it. All I know is it hurt.
Oh yeah. Well, this thing didn't hurt, but the thing that was the oddest is I came out of the tank and I took the barb out and I put down, and I started getting that sensation.
Yeah.
That same thing where you feel it traveling, And so I went and sat down on the couch and stayed calm. But in my whole mindset, I'm like, this is stupid. There's no venom there.
Right.
There's no venom gland, there's nothing there, but I know that the bite or the sting is supposed to be super painful. It wasn't overly painful, but because it was a shed barb. It'd be no different than getting a splinter in the woods.
Right.
But I had that progression, so I went, sat on the couch, and it was about an hour. I sat downstairs, and it progressed with my Sharpie, and I'd progress it, and just sit there calmly with the timer going, and it got up to my wrist. I didn't have a lot of localized swelling or anything, and then it started to dissipate. But it was getting to the point, like, are you gonna have to go to the doctor for this? Like, it was crazy.
Well, I'll tell you, back to something I understand, snakebite. I've actually had people sit on the couch and die from snakebite.
Yeah.
But I've been called on to review the autopsy. So I tell people, if you're bit,
Just go. Yeah.
go. And if you're feeling like, well, maybe it's a drive-by, maybe it's not. If you're sitting in the waiting room of the hospital, it's a lot easier to get treatment than it is
Yep.
if all of a sudden you crash than it is you're sitting on your couch and all of a sudden you go over.
It's not a drive-by.
Yeah, it's not a drive-by.
Whoops.
And some of the neurotoxins, I mean, they can go up to 12 hours before you have any symptoms.
Yep.
And once they hit, it's like, boom, it's there. When I got hit by the Indian cobra, I was sitting there talking to the doctors, and I was talking to Kristen, and I was talking to, actually, my ex-wife who was friends with Kristen, and we were all talking. And I'm like, I'm probably going to, I already had 15 vials of antivenom in me, so I'm still probably going to end up being intubated because it got me on a feeding bite. It got me really good.
Yeah.
And I had to pry it off, and it was like a 4.5, 5 foot Indian cobra. And I'm like, so it got me good.
You guys go get coffee. I'll be here for a bit.
Yeah, no, they were sitting, the doctors were in the other room reading books, trying to get
Well,
on
that's
there.
the reality. They don't know what to
they
do.
were looking at stuff, and they were listening to what we were having to say and everything, because we've got a good rapport with them. And I told Kristen, I told the doctor, I said, I'm going to tell you when I need to be intubated. And they said, okay. And I was telling the story for the longest time. Kristen finally came up to me and said, you didn't say that. She said, you said it, but then when you started going down, all you said was, blah, 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 blah. And you went out. In your mind, you thought you said, it's time to intubate me.
Yeah.
But I didn't say anything. And then I was on the respirator for about 8 hours, and then I started over-breathing it because the antivenom started kicking in and they brought me off. The longer we can put a person on a respirator to keep them alive on the mamba bite, but it's dangerous to do so because there's so many complications that can occur. Without giving antivenom, you can keep a person alive sometimes on some of the neurotoxic bites, but it becomes extremely dangerous because there's all the problems of pneumonia.
Yeah.
You could get aspiration pneumonia, which I got one time from being intubated. But the quicker you can get them off, the best. But the worst time I was intubated was one time they gave me the paralytic agent, but they didn't give me Versed. Versed makes you have amnesia, so you don't remember the wrong. I was paralyzed, but I could see everything. So I had to count ceiling tiles for 8 hours. I can't imagine.
Just to try to keep from going nuts.
Yeah, and I had a buddy who got bit. He worked at a zoo and got bit, and everything went well. We got the anti-Venom and we sent some extra. And I was talking to the doctor like 2 days out. He goes, "Yeah, he's having weird seizures and fighting." Like, fighting? I said, "Did you give him a paralytic?" He goes, "No." I said, "Did you give him Versed?" He was in it.
Yep.
A tiny damage. Yeah. And he had psychological issues obviously after that. So it was sad.
So they give you the paralytic so that you
So
don't
you
fight
don't-
the machine.
Right. You don't
Okay.
fight the machine. And initially when they give you the paralytic, you seize. It's really horrible. It's one of the most horrible things. I've seen it, but Kristen's seen it. You know, I always tell her, "Think of the whole bite so we can critique it." And the one where I had the worst bite from the cobra was that one, and when I seized when they gave it
Like
to
a
me.
full body
Yeah.
seize.
Yeah, it's like she can describe it better than I can. But you'll seize, but there's also, it looks like you have snakes crawling through your skin. Your muscles will do
Rippling.
fasciculation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it feels like when you come out, man, it feels like somebody beat you up with a baseball bat. Because every muscle is contracted in your body. And, you know,
It's like when you get a Charlie horse, but it's your entire
Everywhere,
body.
yeah.
It's your
Everywhere.
entire-
Yeah. And it happens and goes and it happens and goes and happens and goes. And then it goes to another spot and it happens and goes. But you're not typically aware of it because you should have given you Versed also. And that makes you forget all that. You know, you are experiencing it, but you're not remembering it.
So it stops the brain from recording.
I don't know why kids would want to do drugs today. This sounds like way more fun.
Yeah.
This sounds like a way fun experience.
That's not a fun experience. I mean, you know, it's terrifying for somebody to see who's never seen it before.
Yeah.
Because you're watching a person who's a healthy person overall, and there's this little drop of something in their system. Either it's the paralytic agent or it's the venom. One or the other are causing this reaction. And
One little drop.
A little drop, and your
Full-grown
mind don't
man's body,
think. You can't. You're thinking, how can this cause this to us? And for the most part, most bites, snake bites, are not fatal, even without antivenom. Most are not fatal, but there's the chance of organ damage. I live with a.
Yeah, why take the chance and
Yeah.
go a much longer period of time when we can
You know,
shorten it down and save stuff?
The damage to my colon and the damage to my spleen. My spleen, we're pretty sure, was from a snake bite. I threw a blood clot, and it damaged my spleen. The only way to fix that pain is to take the spleen out. You take my spleen out, I have no white count. I can't work with snakes.
Yeah.
So I'll deal with the small amount of pain I get from it. It's not debilitating. I don't take any meds for it or anything. The colon may be from the C. diff I had, but it also could be from the neurotoxins, because your gut talks to your brain, and your brain talks to your gut. So, basically, when I go to the doctor, they take the papers and throw them up in the air and throw a dart.
Yeah.
That's what caused it, because they don't know. They have no clue, because I'm a petri dish basically.
Yeah.
I'm a test.
And every time you get bit or something like that, you have remnants of those things will stay there in your body.
Possibly, yeah. And we have done stuff like we've taken people that have been bitten and taken blood samples, and we can actually put a drop of venom into there from what bit them. And sometimes we'll get a ring at the top, which means they have an active antibody. But that doesn't mean they're immune.
Right.
It just
Well, I've seen
means
those
they're
videos where people take they always do it for show with the
Right.
blood, and they put a couple of drops of venom
Yeah,
and it turns into jello.
Yeah, Russell's has been the most common one used for that, but Bothrops does it. A lot of those, what'll happen is it consumes the clotting factors.
Yeah.
So it doesn't stop your clotting, it consumes them so that they're no longer working, go to DIC. And then that'll turn to jello. The blood will just turn into a giant clot, basically.
You ever seen them? Oh, we'll look at it. They'll have a healthy little petri dish of the little flat dishes,
Right.
full of blood, and they'll drop a little bit of venom into it. And then what happens is it's like, I don't know, seconds or something. It all coagulates, and they just lift the dish and pour it on the thing, and it looks like
It doesn't last long. It'll actually dissipate after a certain point because
they don't show that.
They don't show that part now. But also the problem with that is where you'll have somebody who loses their clotting factors, but they'll die from a blood clot.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just so Venoms are so interesting. We scratch the surface of knowing what with all the stuff, with all the electrophoresis and stuff that we can do now, we're learning more. But people are saying like, okay, well this snake's evolving because it has a neurotoxin. Well, we didn't have a test that was sensitive enough to test that, or we never tested that population in the past. It didn't just evolve yesterday.
Right.
This has
Hundreds
been
of
a
years,
long,
yeah.
this has been a long-term thing. And I mean, we used to see people get bit like by eastern diamondbacks, and people say, "Oh, it must be a neurotoxic bite because he has paralysis in the arm." It's a myotoxin.
Yeah.
It's going to cause the muscles to break down.
Because
so
they're just
your arms-
hematoxin,
yeah.
right?
There are populations that have neurotoxin.
You're right.
Here's the thing: we have more sensitive tests. We're finding neurotoxicity exists in a lot more snakes than we thought. People used to think the prairie rattlesnake was crossing with Mojave, and that would be the only reason they have it. But there's a population of prairies that are so far away from any scoots, and they have a neurotoxin. So
We just never look for it.
we didn't know.
We didn't
Yeah,
have a test.
and it's like with Hellerai. Sherman Minton published papers back in the '60s talking about people having neurological issues due to that. Some of the Vipera, some of the snakes, European vipers and stuff, people have had ptosis from bites. Now, the only way to know if a person is really having a neurological symptom is if you have descending paralysis. Now, if you have paralysis here, it could be neurotoxin, but it could be myotoxin too. When I got hit by the South American rattlesnake, I had both. I had ptosis, and then I had an elevated creatinine level. And what that is my muscles are broken down, and
Which turns into creatine, right?
yeah. And then what happens is it's cleared through your kidneys, which then means you go into renal failure. That's called ribomyolysis. So, and that's what kills more people right now. Timber rattlesnake bites, ribomyolysis is what kills most of them.
The renal failure.
We could sit here all day talking about this stuff.
You want to see? Okay. This is a kilo of monocle cobra venom.
A kilo. Now, how long would to get that kilo of freeze-dried, finished venom? How many extractions is that?
I have no clue.
Lots.
Kristen might know. She keeps better track of that stuff.